lawyers, all those who departed since our last sitting because of COVID-19. Our condolences are with all families who have suffered loss of their loved ones from the virus. In the same vein, on behalf of the legislature community, I wish to extend our gratitude for the work being done by essential services workers, including but not limited to doctors, nurses, health practitioners, security agencies, and frontline workers. May we take a moment of silence in honor of the departed souls. May their souls rest in peace. May their souls rest in peace. Amen. Honorable members, the sitting today is intended to deal with the general budget debate and thereafter pave way for the work of the committee of the whole House. We also want to remind for the submission of disclosure of financial interest forms. Members are urged to submit disclosure of financial interest forms as soon as possible. The deadline has passed where these forms were due on the 30th of April 2020. Any assistance in this regard, please, honorable members, liaise with Manager Legal Services, Mr. Nishan Sukraj. The number is given. Honorable members are reminded that this virtual sitting will be conducted in terms of the rules for virtual meetings read with our existing standing rules. In terms of Rule 6 of the rules virtual meetings, the quorum requirement for virtual sittings of the House are as provided for in the Constitution and the standing rules of the Legislature. Standing Rule 44 of the standing rules provide that at least 1/3 of all the members of the Legislature must be present to constitute a plenary meeting of the Legislature. The rules for virtual meetings also define present as follows. Present means the attendance of a member in a virtual meeting by electronic means in a manner that allows the member to join and participate in the meeting. The Secretary has confirmed that we have the required 1/3 of members present to commence the sitting. Therefore, the sitting is correct. Honorable members, party voting. Rule 7G of the rules for virtual sittings also state that the presiding officer must, before the start of the discussion on the matter, expressly inform members if a party vote will be taken. In line with the above, I confirm that voting on both the finance and STACOV reports will be done on a party-by-party basis. A party vote is a collective vote on behalf of all the members of the party present at this virtual sitting, up to the total membership of that party at the sitting. I will, however, allow an opportunity for any individual member to vote differently from his or her party, or to abstain if any member wishes to do so. Rulings on connectivity. Members, before we proceed with the budget debate, there is a matter of procedure that I must alert you to. This also applies generally to all the debates that we will be conducting this week. Members are all aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to radically change the manner in which we normally conduct our budget debates. Whereas we would normally conduct this debate while physically present at the chamber, we have now been compelled to conduct our debates through virtual means. This has come with its challenges, not the least of which is the fact that many of us have network connectivity and other problems. This may present a problem if a member is trying to participate in a debate but cannot do so due to connectivity issues. Faced with this issue, the legislature must exercise a reasonableness in conducting its business and enabling members to participate effectively in legislature debates. We must try to cater for and assist members who have this difficulty. In order to do so, it is my ruling that the following measures will be adopted to try and assist members who may not be able to participate due to connectivity issues. If a member has connectivity problems, the presiding officer will continue with other speakers on the speakers list for the debate. If the member regains connectivity before the response to the debate has commenced, the presiding officer will be flexible in applying the speaker's list. The member will be allowed to continue and finalize his or her speech as long as the member reconnects prior to the commencement of the response to the debate. Secondly, we also ask members who are debating to allocate a fellow party member who will be able to take over the member's speech and read the member's speech into the record if the member is unable to reconnect. Presiding officers will then allow the fellow party member to take over the member's speech. If all else fail and the member is unable to present his or her speech or to get another party member to take over, it is directed that the member might submit his or her speech to the Secretary of the Legislature, and the speech will be included in the record of the debate. Members, while we hope we do not have any connectivity problem, if it does occur, we trust that the above-mentioned measures will assist members. I hope that this is in order. We will now proceed to the rest of the matters on the other paper. Honorable members, we have received the following apologies. Honorable Mr. S. Sinkosi to leave at 1400 hours to join the NCOP virtual meeting. Honorable Bishop E.V. Dube is attending a funeral. Honorable Mr. M.E. Pakati is having a family commitment. Honorable Mr. S.W. Mshengu is also having a meeting, an NCOP meeting, and will join the sitting at around about 11. Honorable members, may we now move on to item number 4, announcements or reports by the Premier. Honorable Premier. Honorable Premier, we are on announcements or reports by the Premier. Members of the executive, the Premier is not responding. Is there any announcement from the Premier that one of you has with you? Honorable members, am I audible? Can any honorable member hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, but we cannot hear honorable individuals.
We hear you speak, but we don't hear the message.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now the problem that we are waiting for, Honorable Premier or an MEC so mandated by the Premier to respond on reports by the Premier.
Premier, Honorable Speaker, we are not mandated to say anything, but just for the sake of progress, let me say we have no announcement from the executive.
Thank you, MEC Nkonyeni. Can I now move on to item number 5 on the order paper, which would be tablings. We have received the following tablings: STACOV report on oversight in respect of vote 2 on the KZN appropriation bill of 2020, finance portfolio committee report 2020-21 general budget report and resolutions, the report of the finance portfolio committee 2021 budget hearings, Premier portfolio committee report, Office of the Premier, Department of Royal Household Trust Annual Performance Plan 2020-21, Department of Royal Household Strategic Plan 2020 to 2025, Economic Development and Tourism Portfolio Committee report for Economic Development and Tourism Portfolio Committee 2021. From the COPTA, we have got the Nongoma Local Municipality Report 2018 to 2019. Then we have Ndumeni Municipality Oversight Report 2018 to 2019. On the Department of Arts and Culture, we have the KwaZulu-Natal Amafa and Research Institute Strategic Plan from 2021 to 2024 to 2025. And the KwaZulu-Natal Amafa and Research Institute Annual Performance Plan for 2020-2021. Are there any other tablings that members still want to make? Honorable members, is there any other tablings that you want to make at this stage? In the absence of further tablings, can we now move to item number 6, formal motions or notices by the Chief Whip? Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. There are no formal motions and notices from our side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Now we move to item number 7. Item number 7.1, the general debate and voting on the Finance Portfolio Committee and STACOV report. We will now go to the speakers list. We will call upon the chairperson of the Finance Portfolio Committee to table the report for 15 minutes. Honorable S. Nkosi.
Siyabonga kakhulu Somlomo ukusinika leli thuba ukuthi sibeke lo mbiko egameni lekomiti lezeyimali KwaZulu-Natal. We want to indicate, Honorable Speaker, that on the 10th of March 2020, the Finance Portfolio Committee and all legislature committees received a comprehensive briefing from the Provincial Treasury on the 2020-2021 MTF budget for the whole of KwaZulu-Natal. The Provincial Treasury also assisted the Finance Portfolio Committee with the pre-hearing briefings prior to each hearing. The committee extends its sincere appreciation to the Provincial Treasury for its support during these hearings. The Finance Portfolio Committee held the 2020-2021 MTF budget hearings with all 14 government departments and all public entities from the 10th of March 2020 to the 24th of April 2020. Prior to each hearing, the committee received a comprehensive briefing from the Provincial Treasury on each budget and entities 2020-2021 MTF budget projections. The pre-hearing briefings were very important to the Finance Portfolio Committee members so that we would understand the nitty-gritties as observed by the Provincial Treasury. During the hearings, departments and public entities had to respond to all of the issues raised by the Finance Portfolio Committee based on the information contained in the 2020-2021 MTF budget. Portfolio Committee chairpersons and all honorable members belonging to those relevant portfolio committees were invited through the cluster committee managers to attend hearings relevant to their portfolio committees. Some portfolio committee members attended the hearings and participated in the discussions. The role of the portfolio committees in the following up during the financial year on the recurring and transversal findings is very, very important and is included as a standing item on the committee's agenda when they are holding meetings with the departments. Furthermore, portfolio committees are urged to scrutinize responses to resolutions by departments, as well as monitor closely the expenditure and implementation of turnaround plans in instances where departments are requested to provide this, in order to ensure balanced expenditure of their allocated budgets and ensure service delivery on the ground. On the issue of fiscal consolidation, the National Treasury effected cuts against the KwaZulu-Natal provincial budget over the 2020-21 MTF. The Provincial Executive Committee of KwaZulu-Natal decided to protect departments against these cuts in the 2020-2021 as far as possible by offsetting a large part of the cuts by using the positive 2019-2020 net financial position. Utilizing some funds that have been kept in the Provincial Revenue Fund and by effecting cuts against entities that have shown slow spending. The budget cuts were also offset by reducing the budgets of departments with slow spending against the COE, as well as those showing high expenditure on events. These measures reduced the impact of the cuts for department in 2020-2021. The Finance Portfolio Committee commends the Provincial Executive Council for taking these measures. However, in the 2 outer years of the 2020-2021 MTF, the cuts are significant. The Finance Portfolio Committee strongly urges all departments to utilize their allocated budget prudently and effectively to achieve service delivery under these difficult conditions. Furthermore, departments are reminded to adhere to the cost-cutting measures that were issued by the National Treasury through Instruction Note number 3 of 2017-2018. On the issue of conditional grants, in 2019-2020 financial year, EPWP grants were at 210.352 million rand, but in the 2020-2021, they dropped to 183.385 million rand, showing a loss of 26.967 million rand in the current financial year. 2 departments did not receive EPWP grants, and the other one did not receive the incentive grant for provinces in the 2021-2020 in the year 2020-2021. The Department of Social Development's Honorable Speaker must be commended for having shown an increase on the EPWP allocation from 34.913 million to 48.148 million rand. The Finance Portfolio Committee committed itself to find out from the National Treasury the real reasons why some departments were not allocated, because it doesn't believe it was due to fiscal consolidation cuts. After consulting the National Treasury, the committee established that the reason these 3 departments could not get the allocation, it was because they failed to account for the money that was utilized in line with the accounting measures that are set for the EPWP grants. The Finance Portfolio Committee, Honourable Speaker, reiterates its call that departments must ensure not only full expenditure of all conditional grants and specifically and exclusively appropriated funds, but must also report on those funds correctly. The Department of Public Works, as the coordinator of EPWP program, must assist departments and ensure that they report correctly to the National Treasury and the Department of National Public Works on the EPWP conditional grants so that we don't lose any cent as the province. Honourable Speaker, would want to comment as the Finance Portfolio Committee on COVID-19 impact on the budget of KwaZulu-Natal. This pandemic will affect the provincial budget in many ways and will undoubtedly require the use of the province's contingency reserves. Departments and entities may also be required to reprioritize from their budgets in order to direct those funds to deal with the war that we are waging against the COVID-19. To this end, the Finance Portfolio Committee recommends that departments and public entities that have changed their budgets from the budget that was tabled in March must do a reconciliation sheet that will show how the monies were shifted, but we'll deal with that during the adjustments budget. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the Finance Portfolio Committee of KwaZulu-Natal, I would like to thank the executive authorities, the accounting officers, and officials of various departments, the accounting authorities of the various public entities, the provincial treasury in particular, and the legislature support staff for their assistance and cooperation during the hearings. I would also like to thank the members of the Portfolio Committee on Finance for their hard work and commitment, and the members of the various portfolio committees who attended these hearings. Honorable Speaker, the Finance Portfolio Committee tables 57 resolutions taken during these hearings on the 2020-2021 MTF budgets, and we are pleading with the legislature to accept these resolutions and the report. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the Finance Portfolio Committee.
Thank you, Honorable Ngosi. The next speaker is going to be the chairperson of STACOV, Honorable Ntombela. But may I request, honorable members, that whilst one speaker is on the podium, the only speaker that would have his video on is the speaker that is on the podium. All of us must switch off our videos and only allow the speaker that is speaking at that particular moment to have the video on. Honorable Ntombela, chairperson of the Standing Committee on Oversight, for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the Standing Committee on Oversight, we present our report in respect of vote to the Legislature and Appropriation Bill 2020. The bill was tabled in the House on the 6th of March 2020 by the MSC for Finance. The bill was thereafter referred to the Standing Committee on Oversight for consideration of vote to and to report to the House. The committee had its budget hearing on the 24th of April 2020 to consider the bill in respect of vote 2. Having considered the bill as well as the accompanying papers and reports, the committee agreed to approve the bill in respect of vote 2. I therefore, on behalf of the Standing Committee on Oversight, accordingly recommend that the House vote in support of the bill. We thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ntombela. Now we're going to have the first speaker who would be representing the ANC for 10 minutes, Honorable S.M. Sonjika, for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to you, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to the Premier and members of the Executive Council. Greetings to the honorable members of the August House. Honorable Speaker, we must all remember that this month marks the 45th anniversary of the Soweto Students' Revolution, which took place on the 16th of June 1976. Brave young people stood up and challenged the notorious apartheid regime, which attempted to impose Afrikaans as a medium of instruction to the African schools. Some of these innocent children lost their lives when police and army used live bullets. A 13-year-old boy, Hector Peterson, was among those who were brutally killed. And thus, our government correctly named June month as the youth month in our country in 1994. Honorable Speaker, the Finance Portfolio Committee went through the budget in the office of the Premier. We picked up that COCTA had transferred 4 million for infrastructure work to be done in the palaces of His Majesty. to the Office of the Premier. The Finance Committee advised that such transaction should have been approved by Provincial Treasurer and a written agreement entered into, showing a clear terms and conditions of such a transfer. The committee noted that the Zulu Royal Household Trust organizes many events and receives transfers from departments as well as donations from donors. The accounting officer was asked to mention the departments and donors and amounts that are involved in this events. Oral Speaker, the Finance Portfolio Committee fully supports the 50 million availed by the Office of the Speaker for youth empowerment. What is of concern to the committee is that no amount is shown for the 2 outer years, and that is not clear who and how it will be accounted for. That's an area that we would like the Office of the Premier to look at. Like many departments and public entities, the Office of the Premier is found wanting on the delays to the filling of critical vacant posts. 20 posts were identified, but it's not clear as to when they would be filled, as officials always complain about lengthy recruitment processes. Or Speaker, a thorough scrutiny of the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development was also looked at by the committee. Our scrutiny found out that this department could not fill 56 critical vacant posts in 2019-20. The department was asked to provide a clear plan which will ensure that all critical vacant posts are filled so as to give the department the capacity to perform better. We also robustly engaged this department on its dismal failure to spend its budget, worse on conditional grants, mainly the CAPS and Ilima Letsima, 97.425 million was rolled over from these 3 conditional grants. There is also a report of that 84 farms had been identified and would be assessed for support. Finance Portfolio Committee wants to know where are these farms and how much from CAPS will be used. Our interest was also on the allocations of Ada, Mjindi, and Tingweti Estate to form a new Ada. The committee's interest was on financial implications of this measure. Honorable Speaker, the Finance Portfolio Committee remains concerned about the historical challenges in the supply chain management of the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Underspending of the budget has always been blamed on the capacity and constraints of the SCM. The department was asked if the employees in the SCM possesses requisite skills and capacity to perform this function. We also had an engagement with ATA during the level 5 lockdown. We note the EPWP integrated grant for provinces was reduced by almost 500,000 due to importance of this grant in job creation. The Finance Portfolio Committee wanted to know the valid reasons for this, which led to this huge reduction. It is worth noting that the majority of the departments had their expanded works program grants reduced in 2021, and 3 of them were allocated 0. The chairperson has alluded to this matter in the committee report. This shows that there is something wrong either in spending or accountability thereof. It was on this basis that the Finance Portfolio Committee resolved that Public Works, as the expanded works program coordinator of the all EPW program grants, was asked to closely monitor the spending and provide capacity where it's lacking, and to assist the departments in this regard. Honourable Speaker, we were also surprised to discover that ATA had not allocated funding for Umtai Marula Festival organized annually by Inkosi Tembe. The committee is aware that failure to budget for this important event may lead to planning challenges. The committee therefore wants to know how ATA will fund the 2021 Umtai Marula Festival. The Finance Portfolio Committee is aware of the proposal to merge KZN Liquor Authority and KZN Gaming and Betting Board. ATA is asked to provide a report showing the cost effectiveness of this measure. Honourable Speaker, the Legislature has been hearing about challenges in Ezemvelo wildlife. The main challenges cover the bad state of accommodation facilities, road infrastructure, lack of a compensation strategy. The accounting officer is asked to provide a report on how these challenges can be resolved. Honourable Speaker, we know that KZN big departments has been tasked with the responsibility to establish their own internal audit units. The Department of Education is among those big departments. It goes without saying that establishing such units needs additional funding. The Finance Portfolio Committee wants Education to state its readiness to establish or beef up such internal audit unit. A major concern of the Finance Portfolio Committee is on high cost of compensation of employees in the Department of Education. This is supposed to be in a ratio of 80-20 so that there is money for operation expenses and service delivery. The Education Department is therefore asked to provide a turnaround strategy to ensure that compensation of employees does not exceed the 80% we advance. This proposal fully understanding that education, like health department, is labor-intensive department. Education is also encouraged to do regular head count for both educators and learners. This audit may identify educators who are on long sick leave so that education engages Tandile to grant them medical boarding, thus saving in double parking. Another area could be thank you, Speaker. I conclude by advising all government departments and public entities to spend their budgets in full, more specifically on conditional grants, so that KZN money does not revert back to the National Revenue Fund. I so thank you, Honourable Speaker.
John.
Thank you. The next speaker is from the IFP, Honourable L.J. de Klerk, for 7 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. During testing and difficult times, it's very important that we all stand together and try to overcome the challenge or problems. Our minds and discussions are taken over by the COVID-19 pandemic. This does not mean that the IFP, as the official opposition in this legislature, must keep quiet and ignore the huge financial challenges that are staring us in the face. Winston Churchill said, and I quote, "Criticism may not be agreeable, but it is necessary. It fulfills the same function as pain in the human body. It calls attention to unhealthy state of things." The country's financial position has been deteriorating at an alarming rate for the past 8 years and has now crashed on the rocks as all three rating agencies currently place our financial rating as junk. This happened before the COVID-19 lockdown was promulgated. The ANC tells us that the government was corrupt because the wrong people were in charge. Once our new president, Mr. Ramaphosa, and his new cabinet is in place, everything will be different. The state will give us the following: great education, the best healthcare services, free land, the rich will pay the taxes, and the poor people will get welfare programs that they need to escape poverty. This utopian view has been the mantra of the ANC for a long time, and always stating that they will self-correct. The core of these fantasies is a perfect government, one led by honest and patriotic people that will bring an end to corruption, multiply welfare programs, and correct the injustices of neoliberalism. There is one small but ever so crucial detail in their fantasies, such as it is like a cruel mirage that haunts most travelers in the middle of the desert. It evaporates as soon as you reach out your hand to try and touch them. They soon and quickly turn into dust. So far, the new ANC administration has been there for months, and the slow motion vanishing of their fantasy continues. We were promised that decisive action against corruption will be taken, but to date, nobody has been taken to task. Of importance, nobody has been found guilty or imprisoned. South Africa was promised a good economic growth rate. However, we are facing the reality of a recession, and this was prior to the COVID-19. We again are told that the government will act strongly against crime, but we have more than 20,000 murders committed every year. The citizens of South Africa, as opposed to before, are more unsafe, and the statistics are a proven fact of me saying so. During the State of the Province address, the budget speeches, we heard socialist and communist mantras, namely the democratic revolution, the environmental state, quotes from Karl Marx, Lenin expropriation without compensation, and the disciplined forces of the left. All these fantasies are back to a bygone era that prove that the world that these ideas don't work and are unsustainable. In the past, the socialist communist countries had to build walls to keep their citizens from leaving their country. It is bad in a country. If it is bad in a country, the citizens immigrate, and that sadly is exactly what is happening in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Year on year, our equitable share is decreasing, and year on year, there are fiscal consolidation cuts. The Departments of Arts and Culture and Health now didn't even receive the EPWP money. The Department of Health also and Transport incurred billions of irregular expenditure over the last 3 years. The fiscal failures are never ending and have brought us to our knees. The COVID-19 pandemic was the last straw because of all the wastage, looting, and irregular expenditure. We don't have enough resources to deal with the pandemic efficiently and effectively. We are now being told by the ANC government that our provincial budget will have to be cut further and to be reprioritized to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. We are now debating an old budget that clearly will have to be reviewed, and it is not relevant anymore. It is time for the ANC to take responsibility for our entire financial situation and for them to impose common sense and well-accepted free market policies to get us out of this hole, and not to double down on rejected and failed socialist communist policies. We as the IFP implore the ANC to do the right thing. Otherwise, we will pay the price for many years to come. Thank you.
Bora is virtual sittings.
The next speaker is from the DA, Honorable F.A. Rogers, for 8 minutes.
Madam Speaker, it would be inexcusable if this House didn't at first acknowledge the dire effects that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the lives of our people and the economy. COVID-19 has witnessed untold deaths in South Africa and in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and our heartfelt condolences go out to those who've lost loved ones during this difficult time. One life lost is one life too many. Not only has this pandemic destroyed lives, it's also destroyed livelihoods, resulting in job losses, loss of income, hunger, and exacerbated poverty. It has seen an enormous burden being placed on our healthcare system as we struggle to deal with the fallout of the pandemic. This is indeed the time for true leadership to come to the fore, for true leadership to put our people first. This pandemic has indeed afforded us a time to analyze, assess, and take corrective steps that put our people first. Our slogan should be #MakeItCount. In our analysis, we need to collectively acknowledge the stark reality that the social inequality remains the #1 challenge, and this pandemic has clearly highlighted the failures of the past 25 years. True leadership will be able to identify and acknowledge these failures, take corrective steps, and to rectify the failures without spending energy and time on excuses for failures. True leaders are solution-driven and not excuse-driven. Madam Speaker, the province and the country as a whole finds itself in uncharted waters as a result of this pandemic. Now, I know the MEC of Finance, Honourable Pillay, always accuses some of us in the House of being the prophets of doom. However, as I said earlier, what is now needed is to analyse, assess, and implement corrective measures. Adopt, adapt, and improve. Allow me, therefore, to commence this process of analysing and assessing, Madam Speaker. Prior to the COVID-19, the province was already facing fiscal challenges and constraints in the 2021 budget, having endured 8 consecutive cuts in our provincial equitable share, this year seeing another 998 million rand cut, moving to 2.8 billion in the outer year. As the chairperson KK said, it gets worse in the outer years. Added to this, KZN further had to undertake an additional 1 billion rand budget cut across all departments. The result, almost a 2 billion rand budget cut. These cuts were already going to be a challenge, and our ability as a province to deliver was going to be a challenge. Then COVID-19 hit the world, and without sounding flippant, Madam Speaker, it's indeed turned our world as we know it upside down. The economic impact of the coronavirus on the 2021 budget is that we now need to undertake a further budget cut of over 6 billion of our provincial budget. The result is that our budget of 138 billion rand will now fall to 132 billion rand. And alas, the challenge doesn't end there, Madam Speaker. If one considers the impact on revenue generation in our province, our current projected revenue just on casino and horse racing taxes of 600 million rand, it's evident that this will not be realized. If these two industries remain out of action for 6 months, which appears to be likely, then there would be an estimated additional shortfall in revenue of 300 million rand. In layman's language, the province will now have to operate on exactly the same budget allocation as we did in 2019-2020. Not an easy situation we find ourselves in, indeed, almost an impossible situation. An individual who often found himself in impossible situations was the intrepid explorer Ernest Shackleton, a heroic figure of Antarctic exploration. And on life, Shackleton had this to say, and I quote, "Life to me is the greatest of all games. The danger lies in treating it as a trivial game, a game to be taken lightly, a game in which the rules don't matter much. The rules matter a great deal. The game has to be played fairly, or it is no game at all. And even to win the game is not the chief end. The chief end is to win it honorably and splendidly." Close quote. You see, Madam Speaker, this is not a trivial game we are playing. We are playing with the lives of the people of our province, and rules matter, and we need to play by the rules, and we need to be honorable about it. Mediocrity can no longer be acceptable. The reality is we have up until now accepted mediocrity. The acceptance of mediocrity will see the collapse of this province under the trials that lie ahead. Mediocrity, Madam Speaker, is when this House passes a resolution that all departments are to supply committees with monthly management accounts to monitor expenditure. And some 6 months later, I'm not aware of one department that has complied with this resolution. How else are we able to monitor expenditure? How else will we be able to monitor under expenditure on compensation of employees, as was raised by Honourable Sonjika? How else will we be able to monitor grant expenditure, such as the EPWP grants, where some departments, because of their mediocrity, have seen cuts in these grants, and in some cases, the total removal of this grant. The last year saw almost 2 billion, underspent on compensation of employees. This is not a new trend, but an ongoing trend in the province. Perhaps we need to reconsider how we deal with vacant posts going forward to assist us with the economic fallout. Madam Speaker, mediocrity is when department skills audit take longer than the building of the indentured labourers monument or the eThekwini mega library. This mediocrity is unacceptable. The opposite of mediocrity is excellence. And I challenge any members of this House to tell me that the examples that I have just given is indicative of excellence. Mediocrity, Madam Speaker, is when we continually have challenges within supply chain management, within certain departments, continually failing effective supply chain. Mediocrity is when a head of supply chain management is appointed in arts and culture, and the man appointed doesn't even possess a matric certificate. Surely this cannot be an example of excellence. Mediocrity is when the first tender during this pandemic for blankets for those who have less than us during this pandemic is riddled with irregularities. We cannot say...
Your time, Honourable.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll be back.
Thank you so much. The next member is from the ANC, Honourable CQ Mazaupa for 11 minutes.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Premier S. Zigalala, and members of the executive, honourable members of this House, I have an honour to be afforded an opportunity to debate on the 2020-21 budget on behalf of the African National Congress. I dedicate this debate to all those frontline patriotic workers who continue to work hard to protect their country and its citizens against the coronavirus pandemic. We salute them. Africa, my beginning, and Africa, my ending. God heal, protect, and bless Africa. This debate is taking place when our country is characterized by socio-economic constraints added by this virus. In 2019, State South Africa released its inequality trends reports that confirm the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which affect Black, poor, working class, and rural women in particular. Therefore, before COVID-19 arrived in South Africa, the working class, the majority of whom are women, were already predisposed to enduring the most of these triple challenges. The hierarchy of the vulnerability places poor, especially women, at the tail end of this. We hope that 2020-21 MTF budget will be prioritized to change the lives of poor women and youth for the better in particular. Honorable Speaker, allow me to share with this august House the words of wisdom from the former President Nelson Mandela when he was released from the prison when addressing the masses in their numbers to welcome him in Cape Town. He said, and I quote, "Our march to freedom is irreversible. We must not allow fear to stand in our way," close quote. As government led by the African National Congress continue with its onward march to improve the lives of our people, as we confront great challenges, as we confront troubled times, we too cannot allow fear to stand in our way. We must forge forward. Honorable Speaker, Despite the socio-economic challenges coming with coronavirus to worsen the country's economy that has long been teetering on the brink of recession, shedding jobs. As Finance Portfolio Committee, we were satisfied that the Provincial Treasurer did his best to try and balance the competing needs of the different departments when allocating the budget. The Chairperson, Honorable S. Nkosi, has already reported to this august house that the committee held 2021 MTEF budget hearings with 14 provincial departments and its entities. The Finance Committee noted that the Department of Community Safety Liaison was allocated 249.1 million, 251.5 and 263.5 million over the 2020-21 MTEF. The Department of Sport and Recreation was allocated 481.2 million, 502.2 and 525 million. The arts and culture was allocated 1 billion for 3 consecutive years. The Department of Social Development appropriated bigger cake of 3.8, 3.9 billion and 4.1 billion. The committee noted a slight increase in the allocation from 2019-20 budgeted amount to 2020-21 budget year in the above departments. National Treasury effected cuts against the KZN provincial budget over the 2020-21 MTEF, but the good news is that it won't affect programs of service delivery. The budget cuts were offset by reducing the budget of the departments with low spending against compensation of employees and those showing high expenditure on the events. It must be noted, Honorable Speaker, that in the 2 outer years of the 2020-21 MTEF, the cut will be huge. The Finance Portfolio Committee strongly urges all departments to utilize their allocated budget prudently and effectively to achieve service delivery under these difficult conditions. Furthermore, Honorable Speaker, departments are reminded to adhere to the cost-cutting measures that were issued by the National Treasurer in 2017-2018 financial year. During the budget hearing with the departments and its entities, they managed to respond to issues raised by Provincial Treasury during pre-hearing briefings, as well as matters raised by the members of the Portfolio Committee on Finance based on the information contained in the 2020-21 MTEF budget. The committee raised concerns on the lack of conditional grant expenditure on the 2019-2020 financial year, which led to the drop of EPWP grants and some departments not receiving EPWP grants at all. The committee came up with the resolutions on all the concerns raised by Treasury, as the chair was indicating that we came up with 57 resolutions and members of the Portfolio Committee to be reported by the 30th of June 2020, indicating how will they prevent this in future. The Finance Portfolio Committee presented a different resolution for different departments. On Provincial Treasury, the accounting officer must provide a report to the committee whether Treasury was consulted prior to interdepartmental transfer of funds, whether Treasury gave authorization for this interdepartmental transfer, and indicate whether the PFM and Treasury regulations allow direct interdepartmental transfers of funds, and indicate what the role of Treasury is when such transactions take place. And on sports and recreation, the accounting officer must provide a report to the committee on the reasons for the non-allocation of EPWP integrated grant for provinces, explain how the department will pay for the caretakers in the absence of the EPWP integrated grant. The accounting officer must further provide a report giving progress on the filling of vacant posts in the department, because it's a concern, because across the departments, the issue of the not filling of posts is a concern that the Portfolio Committee really raised all the time. Explain how the esports program will be rolled out, and indicate how much the department allocated for the rollout of the esports, indicate how the department selected the athletes that it targeted for the esports initiative. On social development, the accounting officer must provide a turnaround plan with time frames to the committee showing the mechanisms that the department has put in place to address the underspending against the compensation of employees. He must further provide how the department will fund the 6% annual increase for the transfers to NPOs and its carry-through cost over the 2021 MTEF. On arts and culture, the accounting officer or the department must provide a report to the committee on the reasons for the non-allocation of the EPWP integrated grant for provinces. Explain how cleaning and maintenance contracts will be implemented in the absence of the funding from the EPWP integrated grant for provinces, and provide a report on the progress made in the provincialization of libraries. Since the budget process was finalized before COVID-19 in the country, all accounting officers and accounting authorities must report to their relevant portfolio committees and provincial treasury on those departments and entities that have amended their original 2020-21 budget allocation because of COVID-19. They must prepare reconciliation sheets showing their table budget allocation as per the 2020-21 estimate of provincial revenue and expenditure book, and the amended budget showing clearly what has been amended and why. It is important for the departments and entities to report on their spending against the estimate of provincial revenue and expenditure book baseline in the interim until all amendments to the budgets are formalized in the adjustment budget. The portfolio committee are urged to scrutinize the responses to resolutions by the department, as well as monitor very closely the expenditure and implementation of the turnaround plans. These will ensure balanced expenditure on their allocated budget and ensure that service delivery on the ground is realized. Despite socio-economic, as I learned, Honorable Speaker, despite socio-economic challenges, we nevertheless remain confident to you, Honorable Premier, and your government that you shall navigate through these harshest socio-economic storms. We appreciate and we hope that the lives of the poor, the working class, especially the women in rural areas, is going to be changed for the better. Honorable Speaker, the ANC support this budget. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next member for the EFF is Honorable LG Seja for 9 minutes. Honorable Madlopa, switch off your mute your thing and your video. Thank you. Your video also, Honorable. Thank you. Honorable Seja. Honorable Seja.
Ayiki data. Abanye baqede data.
Honorable Twala, are you in the house? Honorable Twala, are you in the house? Honorable Khoza, are you in the house? What we announced earlier on, the arrangement will be applicable. We will come back to Honorable Seja if he is in the house. Honorable Seja, are you in the house? I will check with the admin, but so long we will move to the NFT. Honorable V.R. Mlotshwa of the NFP for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Switch on your video, Honorable Member. As you speak, switch on your video.
Honorable Speaker, am I
Switch on
audible?
Yes. Ushot video kuphela mntakwethu zi-DVD for the transmission to the outside world, please. For 3 minutes.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, we acknowledge and support the general budget. We approve of the decision the Provincial Executive Council made to protect the departments against the fiscal consolidation cuts in the MTF 2020-2021. However, the cuts in the 2 outer years of MTF are significant. The Finance Portfolio Committee, Provincial Executive Council, and the National Treasury evidently need to review MTF, as some of the cuts are ridiculously high and jeopardize the success of funded project and quality of service delivery in all aspects. Conditional grants 2020-2021 financial year, EPWP grants dropped to 183.385 million from 210.352 million, showing a loss of 26.967 million in the current financial year, which arts and culture, sports and recreation did not receive EPWP grant funding at all, while our youth are facing high unemployment and poverty in high living standard society. As the NFP, we are calling for the MEC attention and intervention for this critical matter at hand. We kindly request the department to address the following critical issues. To minimize the under expenditure and over expenditure, to resolve the matter of the FTE, which the EPWP grant is facing, increase funding towards the grant and employ our youth as they are the future of this nation. The department must address the issue of infrastructure development. Some of the governmental buildings do not cater for disabled people. Toilets of Muslim provide water and sanitation to the people free of charge. All district offices must have their own physical building and not to rent. Increase funding to the Department of Arts and Culture and the Department of Sports and Recreation, as some of the rural areas and schools do not have enough resources to continue and introduce new activities relating to this department. I thank you, Speaker.
Honorable member. The next member is Honorable S. Thakur Rajbansi of the MF.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Chair of Finance, this general budget debate, as per the minority front, assumes 2 budget rules to base spend decisions on in these trying times. Firstly, we must spend whatever is needed wherever, and secondly, we must observe and understand the transmission of the coronavirus in our communities. Noting the Finance Committee report by the Honourable S.C. Nkosi, tabled with resolutions, the MF accepts this report, but with the following. These budgetary mechanism determinants requires a rapid scan in all departments, which have allocated COVID-19 spend separately, whilst other program spend have been impacted on negatively. The virulent trends in all departments, especially those affected, for example, health and social development, must soon be able to fully develop specific processes for allocating budget funds to the COVID-19 response, and Treasury must monitor this. Our PFMA and regulatory systems, Honourable Speaker, have seen SEM deviations in the 4th quarter, and these, Honourable Nkosi, must be tracked by Finance and the other portfolio committees, as we are all aware of the skills deficit in the supply chain management units. The Minority Front also notes that every department mitigated slow spending due to the lockdown measures with immediate spending actions within existing budgets on PPEs, food parcels, blankets, sanitizers, ventilators, hospital beds, etc. However, existing conditional grants could not be touched, yet EPWP grants could be used opportunistically by departments because of the labor-intensive requirements of screening and testing presented by COVID-19. We must also be aware that the budget cuts with respect to all has been explained by the Honourable Chair. But two things, Honourable Premier, we must remember. Firstly, how do we as KZN secure a budget for COVID-19 response to revisions in the $111.4 billion provision later this year? And secondly, what must we now do within the confines of level 3 to accelerate budget execution and the release of funds to our frontline and essential workers, as well as to vulnerable citizens, NGOs and businesses in KwaZulu-Natal that may not recover from the impact of this external shock? The Minority Front further wants to thank the Honourable Chair of STACOV for the various oversight visits arranged, notwithstanding the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. However, we believe that much due diligence has to be done as we commence on oversight visits to schools in respect of the opening to ensure readiness to receive our children. So the Minority Front does support both these reports. Thank you. With these recommendations.
Thank you. The next speaker on this is Honorable, from the ANC, is Honorable M. Govender for 11 minutes. Honorable Govender, we request members to please physically switch on the camera.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we meet in the time of Corona and day 2 of level 3 of the national lockdown. The world as we have known it has changed. And as South Africans, we have been catapulted into a world where there is an increasing reliance on the digital and remote forms of working, shopping, and communicating. The fault lines in our country, which is notorious for its massive Gini coefficient gap, have become starker and impossible to overlook. Against this backdrop, we are meeting to approve a budget that we all know is going to change. We know that the demands of dealing with the COVID pandemic will force government departments to review how they have allocated funds and will force them to reprioritize their budgetary allocations. Honorable Speaker, as the African National Congress, we want to urge departments to reprioritize wisely and within the frameworks of the PFMA and the various regulations and notes that have been issued by National Treasury. We are putting departments on notice that the Legislature and the ANC will not tolerate the abuse and mismanagement of public funds under the guise of there being an emergency or emergencies, because there are no such things. What we have is a pandemic that has to be dealt with, and what we want is proper management of it. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the ANC, I will be covering both 7, 8, 11, 12, and 14. My colleagues have dealt with some of the rest, and those to come will deal with the balance. I want to commence, as has been mentioned by previous speakers, with under-expenditure on the EPWP. Honorable Speaker, the EPWP program is one that offers hope to the poorest in our society by enabling them to earn a monthly stipend that helps to put food on their tables. And therefore, it is incumbent on all provincial departments to ensure that such funds are fully spent so that jobs can be created. It is unacceptable to find provincial departments not being able to fully utilize their EPWP funding. And in this regard, we must express our concern that the Department of Health has not received any allocation for the social sector EPWP grant in the 2021 financial year. This has contributed to negative growth in its sub-program community-based services, where the department had previously paid stipends of 10,000 community caregivers to the value of 3,500 Rand a month from this grant. And obviously, this is of serious concern given that the CCGs are expected to play a vital role in these trying times of COVID-19. Importantly, we want to be informed as to how the department is going to fund the community caregiver stipends given the absence of the grant funding from which these stipends had been previously paid. COCTA is also an area of concern because they have received a reduced allocation on EPWP, down from 3.858 million to 2.77 million in 2021. Again, we need to be told why these sorely needed funds have not been spent. Honourable Speaker, we want to urge the relevant portfolio committees to closely monitor these departments and ensure that this practice does not continue. It would be remiss of me, Honourable Speaker, not to draw the attention of the House to the fact that there are an unduly high number of vacant posts in provincial departments, and the failure to fill these posts has resulted in capacity and capability constraints to the extent that departments are not able to function as they should, particularly in areas such as supply chain management, where the lack of competent staff and warm bodies results in weak governance and poor performance. The Department of Transport has committed to filling 204 vacant posts in 2021. And what the Finance Portfolio Committee is asking for is a progress report showing us how these posts are being filled and a time frame. Similarly, COCTA has committed to filling 108 vacant posts in 2021. And again, as the Finance Portfolio Committee, we want a status report. And in both these cases, we want the portfolio committees to track what is happening with these posts because they are an exorbitantly high number. Let me now go to what is undoubtedly the department that has had to grasp the COVID-19 nettle and run with it. I must, Honourable Speaker, express our appreciation to the Department of Health for the manner in which it has been managing the treatment of COVID-19 patients, as well as for its preparations for the looming mass infection that is on our horizon. This department has the second largest share of the provincial equitable share in the province. And these funds, together with several conditional grants, are used to provide for the healthcare needs of the general citizenry of KwaZulu-Natal. However, as the department has repeatedly told us, it is grossly underfunded. But this is also a department that, while crying out for more funds, underspends its compensation of employees' budget, has a poor track record of revenue collection, and has a massive medical legal claims bill. And the management of the COVID-19 pandemic is undoubtedly going to add to its woes. Honourable Speaker, as we are all aware, budget cuts have been effected against all departments in the province, and the impact of this is that the Department of Health has had to implement cuts against all 8 of its programs. In a department that is expected to cater for over 91% of the province's population's health, these cuts have serious consequences, particularly in this period of COVID-19. And the reduction in the compensation of employees' budget will impact further on the department's ability to fill critical vacant posts such as medical specialists, medical officers, paramedics, nurses, porters, cleaners, and the like. Honourable Speaker, as you know, these are all doubly critical in the period of COVID-19. However, of further concern to the Finance Portfolio Committee and the African National Congress is the fact that the department has reprioritized 400 million with carry-through from the compensation of employees to cater for higher security and cleaning costs. And again, these reductions will impact on the department's ability to fill critical vacant posts. We want to know what is the cause of the sudden escalation of costs related to security and cleaning, and how the department is going to deal with this. The reduction in the machinery and equipment budget means that the budget for ambulances is reduced in 2021, and the department has not made any provision for the procurement of vehicles. Again, the department has indicated that the reprioritization might take place during the year, and we want to know why have they not provided funds for procuring vehicles, and where in the budget are they going to reprioritize funds to do so? The Pixley Kaiser Kaseme Memorial Hospital is a wonderful project, and it's something that shows that the foresight of the African National Congress in the province and the Department of Health in proceeding with this. It is also going to be vital in the management of the COVID pandemic. So what we want to know is that the hospital was supposed to have been completed in 2019. However, its completion date was pushed to the 1st of June 2020. And these delays have also affected the determination of the actual commissioning of the hospital. So what we want, Chairperson, is to find out whether the department has imposed penalties on those contractors who defaulted, on whether the delays in the completion of this hospital will have any financial implications, whether or not this hospital has now been completed, because we are now just past the 1st of June, and whether there is a new date for the commissioning of the hospital. Honorable Speaker, as you know, in this period of COVID-19, we have no choice but to use every facility available. So this one is sorely needed. Then, Chairperson, I mentioned earlier that the department's track record in terms of income, revenue collection is poor, but we have been told that an electronic billing system was introduced in some of the facilities a few years ago, and we would like to get a report from the accounting officer about progress in this. We are also aware that the MEC did brief us that there was some innovation that had been introduced using young people to come up with an electronic records management system. And we think that this would be very important in assisting to contain the runaway medical legal costs in the department, because access to records has been one of the problems in the legal challenges. So we would want a report on that, and we would want to also get a report on how the department is progress in the establishment of the 4 centers of excellence in the province that are supposed to be established to deal with the tackling of medical legal costs. Honorable Chairperson, before I move off from this vote, Honorable Speaker, let me say that whilst we all acknowledge that we are in a COVID-19 pandemic, and this is preoccupying all of us, the department has to give us an assurance that it will not just expend its funds on COVID-19, but it will also ensure that funds are allocated and used to deal with HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis, measles, malaria, and the like. Because all of these things are here in the province. They have been here before COVID-19 and will probably be here after COVID-19 as well. We can't afford having these things added to the pandemic. Honorable Speaker, let me now move on to vote 8 human settlements, which has had its budget reduced and has affected the budget cuts against goods and services in respect of property payments, as well as against the compensation of employees. Honorable Speaker. Sorry. These budget cuts will affect the rate at which the department will be able to fill posts, but the department says that it will reprioritize in year to offset the budget cut implemented in respect.
Honorable Governor.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The African National Congress supports the budget.
The next speaker is Honorable from ATM is Honorable M.E. Pakati for 3 minutes. And he has tendered an apology, therefore falls off the speaker's list. We go to the next member, Honorable S.E. Manqele from the ACDP for 3 minutes.
Greetings, you Speaker, and all honorable members, in the name of Jesus.
Honorable Manqele, Honorable Manqele.
Yes, ma'am.
Honorable Manqele, please switch on your camera. Switch on your camera.
It is switched on, madam.
Thank you. Thank you. Then you can speak. We are starting it. I'm speaking, Honorable.
ACDP welcome all the presentation and thank the presenters for them. We also want to thank the transparency shown by the presenters, even though it will have been much greater if this day came after all questions asked from the department have been answered. To those departments that failed the EPWP grant will forever be an incurable wound to the communities, because it really affects the community if the department cannot handle the budget with care. In terms of COVID-19, it will be wise for us to make a part of our budget, as we have done during the time of HIV and AIDS and TB. In other ways, to create just a straight vote for COVID-19. So we as ACDP, we welcome the presentation, we welcome the budget, with a hope that you will be able to implement it in time, and the people of KwaZulu-Natal will benefit out of it. With these few words, Speaker, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Manqele. The next speaker for 4 minutes is from the DA, Honorable F.A. Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I ended off in the first section of my debate, I spoke about the unacceptability of mediocrity, and I spoke about supply chain, which I've listened to various members in the finance portfolio, all raising the concern, and I gave you the concern of the Department of Arts and Culture that appointed a man without even a matric certificate, and about the tender of blankets. Now, you know, we cannot continue carrying on in this vein with the financial constraints that are going to face us. And perhaps consideration here should be given to putting supply chain management, particularly in departments that are non-compliant, under the supervision of Treasury until those departments get their act together, because it certainly appears that some departments will continue with their mediocrity performance, or their mediocre performance. Madam Speaker, mediocrity, when there's a critical department such as agriculture has to appear before Scopa, is hopelessly unprepared, with reports that are so badly drafted that they're actually not worth the paper that they're written on. And this recently happened. You know, mediocrity is when the same department is actually sent packing at the start of the hearing. The Department of Agriculture is one of the key drivers in this province and needs to become a center of excellence, not mediocrity. It cannot, Madam Speaker, be business as usual any longer. You see, Madam Speaker, there was a glimpse of excellence that I saw when recently Honorable Zigalala approached me after a debate at the showgrounds, and he requested a meeting with me to get my input and my understanding of what the challenges are that are being faced in the Department of Agriculture. Now, this is what I expect of a leader. Alas, it was a mediocre attempt. This engagement never materialized. Mediocrity is when I approached the MEC of Agriculture, Cyril Xaba, who was then MEC, also approached Honorable Semelani Zulu as Chairperson of Agriculture, to discuss serious challenges faced by certain emerging farmers in my community on state-funded projects, where these farmers were facing an onslaught from delinquent departmental employees. The result, Madam Speaker, no intervention. Mediocre leadership. Agrarian transformation will take excellence and not mediocrity. Agrarian transformation will assist us in dealing with the economic pandemic that's facing us moving out of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, as Shackleton so rightly stated, if you play the game of life, you have to play by the rules. Trivializing the rules leads to mediocrity. Talking about a capable ethical state is no longer enough, Madam Speaker. If we want to survive what will become an economic pandemic, we need to apply the rules. If it's mediocre, it must go. If it's mediocre, it must go, with no fear or favor. Madam Speaker, in light of the dreadful racist attack on one of the US citizens and one of the leaders who I often follow and read on his words, I want to leave this house with this quote from Martin Luther King, and I quote, "We may all have come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now." Close quote. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The time, I was just going to say the time has expired. The next member from the IFP is the Honorable Leader of Official Opposition, Honorable VF Tabisa, for 8 minutes.
Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Premier, and Honorable members, on behalf of the IFP, I want to start by saluting all men and women who are the frontline soldiers in the fight against COVID-19. Our condolences go to the families of all the souls who have succumbed to this deadly virus. Although we know that a storm is yet to come, as we also see daily the growing figures of infections, we find comfort on the constant of almost by half of recoveries for weeks now. Honorable Speaker, Inkatha Freedom Party, like all the other political parties that were present in the constitutional making process from the interim constitution in 1993 and the new constitution as promulgated in 1996, the IFP contributed in a number of proposals. Among these proposals was a proposal for the establishment of the provinces with powers to be able to sustain themselves financially through taxation. The IFP proposal for the establishment of provinces was accepted, but the powers to impose taxation was rejected. Today, Honorable Speaker, we are bearing the brunt of that rejection of a noble and visionary proposal that was kicked out for the purposes of centralization, even where there was no need to do so. In South Africa, provinces are solely reliant upon the national fiscals for their survival. In reality, the provinces as they stand, financially they cannot survive nor stand on their own. Many municipalities are in a much better position than provinces because they can collect rates and charge fees for services. Provinces are expected to close the gap of development inequalities that was created by the separation policies of the apartheid government. After 26 years into our democracy, the development ambiguities in South Africa still remain so clear between the rich and the poor, between the urban and the rural, between the professionals and the general labor force, between and amongst the different racial groups. Against our wish, the 2020-2021 budget will in no way come any closer towards closing this gap, because this is what the National Fiscus has allocated to this province this year. There is nothing we can do but make do with what we have, no matter how little it may be. For a long time, rural and township schools as they are today will remain lagging behind with no proper sanitation facilities, no libraries, no laboratories, no IT rooms, and no clean water. Rural and township clinics will also continue to suffer the same fate. Rural roads will continue on a trajectory of gravel fate, and township road will still bear the brunt of potholes. Rural and township police stations will again look like ghettos with no improvements in sight. There is a lot more that will still continue to look the same deep into the galloping years of our democracy, which is not young anymore. Our provincial budget, compounded by the budget cuts, is failing to meet the development needs, expectations, and aspirations of our people. For these reasons and many others not mentioned here, the ethos of doing more with little becomes the most reasonable thing to abide by. The ideal of our administration in all departments in respecting the rule of law and playing by the book needs to be our guiding principle. Our meager resources are further burdened by the government officials who breach the protocols and fail to follow legislation to the letter, especially in the spending patterns. As this House, Honorable Chairperson, we need to always follow the principle of oversight role effectively in order to protect the little that is allocated to our province so that our communities can benefit of it. The vultures who rob our citizens the benefits of development and government resources through fraud and corruption must be made to face their music. We will follow closely as we would want to see justice done on the controversial purchase of the 22 million rand of blankets by the Social Development Department. To this effect, consequence management must play a pivotal role in the management of our province. Honorable Chairperson, the IFP is concerned with the slow pace of investigation on government officials that are charged with wrongdoings. Some of these investigations date as far back as 2010. In order for the province to thoroughly clean its administrative performance, consequence management must play a pivotal role in our administration. We must bring to an end the continuation of the practice where an official that has wronged one department resurfaces in another prestigious position of another department or government entity a few months down the line. Members have noted the cuts effected in our provincial 2020-2021 budget, and I do want to add our voice to the same concern, especially the money that we lost through the EPWP cuts, which was a result of our negligence. We also note with concern the allocation of job evaluations every year, which end up not being undertaken. That is a cause for concern, Chairperson. We are also alive to the pressures imposed by the arrival of COVID-19, whose financial imperative will still need to be considered. With these comments, the IFP supports the budget. I thank you.
Thank you. The next member on the speaker's list from the ANC is Honorable VP Xaluza, the Deputy Chief Whip, for 10 minutes.
Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, the Premier in the Executive, the Leader of the Official Opposition, and honorable members. Before I begin, allow me, Speaker, to venture into what Honorable Rogers has said. Honorable Speaker, the mediocrity that Honorable Rogers is referring to is when we come to public platforms and admit that we are failing to conduct our work as those who are in charge of oversight. The mediocrity is not raising irregularities, Honorable Speaker, in our respective portfolio committees to ensure that those who should account are held accountable. But we come to public platforms and we cry foul. Honorable Speaker, mediocrity is expecting someone else to do our job, either than using the very same portfolio committees that we sit in and ensuring that everyone that needs to account is held accountable. Let us also welcome, Honorable Speaker, the investigation that has been set up by the Premier of our province in the notorious 22 million blanket project. And we appeal once again that through the respective portfolio committee of social development, we hold anyone that needs to account if there is indeed any transgressions. As I begin, Honorable Speaker, we are currently navigating through the invincible enemy that is the coronavirus. However, we are reminded that leading is about being tested on grounds that we have never found ourselves on. And allow me, Honorable Speaker, to applaud the different political organization of this august House for working together in the fight to defeat the invincible enemy that came in the form of the coronavirus. And everyone in the House must truly be applauded. Not once did we see honorable members in the province of KwaZulu-Natal capitalizing on the shortcomings on the side of government, but we have pulled together in the direction that is in the interest of the citizens of our province. Honorable Speaker, for the first time, the budget sittings are convened virtually in our legislature, and I am sure that some honorable members have numerous challenges relating to this setup, such as the connectivity, which is a great issue in some areas of our province. However, the legislature has took a progressive resolution of allowing honorable members space for those who have challenges during budget debates to actually have an option of going to the legislature precinct as connectivity is high and there is ICT support. It is quite important that we thank you, Speaker, for being able to frame a rule in accordance to Rule 2 of the standing rules and ensuring that the House sits and committees also sit with members who are sitting in the remote attendance by virtual means. This ruling, Honorable Speaker, allowed the legislature to conduct the responsibilities and ensuring that we are in order in terms of activities that have legal implications. Allow me to focus my debate on the legislature oversight responsibilities under lockdown and the challenges thereof. We must manage our role in ensuring that checks and balances between departments and portfolio committees and legislature as part of legislature responsibilities in order to exercise its oversight comprehensively. Speaker, I want to clearly indicate that though we are affected by this pandemic, we will not at any given point abandon our core responsibilities. We will fully support the lockdown regulation as outlined by the Commander-in-Chief, His Excellency Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, and the National Command Council. Honorable Speaker, the reality is that this pandemic has caught us off guard. We have faced numerous challenges that members can attest to, the main one being conducting our meetings virtually, while we are used to physical meetings and gatherings, which were not permitted in previous levels. The challenge of lockdown hindered us to have an International Women's Day program. The finance budget hearing sittings.
Honorable members, please switch off your mics, mute your mics. Thank you. You may continue, Deputy Chief Whip.
the finance budget hearings and the sittings which were postponed, the precinct renovations have also highly been affected as work had to stop. However, with those mentioned challenges, the legislature has been able to ensure that oversight and engagement, accountability and public involvement is central as meetings work. Honorable Speaker, we must equally applaud the cooperation from the labor federations, which saw a successful workers' parliament that was conducted virtually, which saw subsequently the joint outreach program by from the Speaker's outreach program that took place last week in the 2 districts. And we must truly appreciate this, and we are hopeful that the Youth Parliament will also be a success as well. Honorable Speaker, whilst we are faced currently with the situation that we find ourselves in, it becomes very critical for the legislature to exercise oversight and hold relevant departments accountable for actions taken to stop the spread of the virus, as the legislature is and remains the voice of the people, though the understanding that this pandemic has disturbed the functioning and the planned programs of the department extensively. However, we must be firm in saying that we know the difficult position departments are in. However, the priority number one must be that of prioritizing service delivery to the people of KwaZulu-Natal. The ANC has always emphasized that we need to build a capable and ethical state that serves all the people. That is why we understand that lack of oversight weakens the ability to conduct checks and balances. Therefore, as the legislature in this regard to COVID-19, the process of obtaining information from the relevant accounting officials and the Premier as well as the entire executive in considering the information against objective and independent criteria and information supplied to our team in the legislature must be taken into account. We are mindful of the fact that the legislature is exercising the mandate, which must always make critical decisions in shape of the oversight role it must play. The legislature is exercising a mandate that is always to consider the balancing the needs of the executive to respond timelessly to the crisis, while at the same time account to keep the legislature informed in developments as and when they arise. Today, when we are participating in this important debate, Honorable Speaker, my heart is at pain as I'm reminded of a 16-year-old Andile Mchunu from Hambanati Township in Tongat, who was brutally killed and thrown in the river for allegedly stealing alcohol. This child was buried on Sunday, and today his court case is going on. We must applaud the manner in which our law enforcement dealt with this matter, as well as the community of that entire township in the manner in which they stood up all together in ensuring that those who are responsible are brought to book. Honorable Speaker, we are aware that as we meet today, the Finance Minister is currently busy working on the adjustment budget that will soon be presented before the National Assembly. And as such, we will once again come back to deliberate on the provincial adjustment budget. For now, we can say without a doubt that as the ANC, we support the budget. We must reiterate, Honorable Speaker, the call to avoid unnecessary travel, that we need to stay at home, and those who are not called back to work, they need to remain at home. But most importantly, let us ensure that we continue to wash our hands with soap and ensure that we wear masks if and when we need to go to public places. Honorable Speaker, it is indeed, as honorable members are saying, we are on uncharted waters, but as things stand, we fully support the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable members. I have, during the course of the debate, checked with the Legislature Ops unit and the table staff. Honorable Serger was connected and has indicated to the table staff that he will forego his slot on the debate. So we will now go to the response. I am saying this because there is an expectation that if you are disconnected, you will then be called before the response. Now we will go to the response because it does not apply to him, as he said he will forgo his own slot earlier on. We will go directly to the response by the MEC for Finance in KwaZulu-Natal, Honorable R.R. Pillay, for 20 minutes. Mphathiswa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and greetings to all the honorable members and those who may have logged in to follow this very, very important debate. Let me thank all the participants for their, I think, overall constructive contributions, and where they have pointed shortcomings, we will accept them where they need to be attended to, and but obviously there are some of them which we might have a different view on. Let me very quickly just try to respond to some of the issues raised, and then perhaps if there's time, come back to them in more detail. Let me thank the Honorable KK Nkosi for the work as chairperson and the report. I think several speakers have raised the issue of the EPWP expenditure, but I think we need to place this in context. While those shortfalls are not accepted, I think 95% of the EPWP expenditure has been made. We add our voice to the concern and appeal to departments to attend to that detail, because the EPWP program itself is not complicated in its content. Where the complication arises is in its massive nature, in terms of the 100, I think it was 200,000 at one stage was the number of our people who get benefit from this particular program. Organizing such a massive number and keeping the appropriate records is a simple exercise which departments must simply attend to. Honorable Sonjitwa, thank you for your input. I want to assure you that the principle of the Youth Fund is still being carried through. It's not intended as a permanent fund, but together with very creative approaches such as partnerships with Absa Bank, which the Premier has secured, this Youth Fund we expect to be able to sustain. I want to also say to you that the internal audit issue, yes, is a resolution on it. The implementation of it, having regard to the budget cuts that we are facing, may have to be delayed, but the principle of decentralizing the internal audits is still very much on track. Honorable de Klerk, I think we will agree to disagree as we have on many fundamental issues, but I just want to say to you that what you describe as leftist, socialist language and actions, and if you observe the world response to it, even those who are CEOs of multinational companies are now accepting that government has a bigger role to play, that this issue of small government in the face of the kind of challenges we are facing simply holds no water. In fact, we need bigger, yes, more efficient, but government to play a more active role in all aspects of society, and including the economy. And this is not coming from a socialist, this is coming from a CEO of a multinational company. And I want to say also that despite the fact that we'll be facing budget cuts, 90% of this budget will still remain. So there's absolute value in us in debating and passing this budget, knowing full well that we will have the adjustment budget shortly. Honorable Rogers, I think I agree that we must play the game honorably, that we play the game based on rules, and that will give us sustainable effectiveness. I want to assure you that the issue of supply chain management, and I'll say a bit about it just now, is receiving very, very serious attention. And when you say we want to work together, then I think we must go beyond lip service. When the president talks about a social compact, then that social compact must find expression across all levels of government, across all levels of society. I think it's, I appreciate, but it's quite ironic that you bring up the issue of the United States and George Floyd, who lost his life in that vicious, horrible manner. which has resulted in protests across the length and breadth of the United States of America. But it's also talking to the fundamental issues of the fault lines in society, and that even in this country like the United States, the division between rich and poor is there. The issues of racism is very much alive. And with our history here, we must also be able to say, to what extent do those issues find expression in our country? In fact, it is far, far more serious here. And when you talk about transformation, and I listened to you carefully, when you talked about transformation, then we must be able to walk the talk on that particular matter. Honorable Majlopa, I think thank you for your input. I want to assure you that interdepartmental transfers are done in a very structured way. In this case, it will be COPTA who would make representations. They would surrender their funds to Treasury, which will then reallocate them, in this case, to the office of the Premier. And that would ultimately find expression in the adjustments budget. So there mustn't be any thinking or expectation that there could be bilaterals between departments in the way we manage our finances. Honorable Lord Shua, thank you for your input. And yes, the MTEF as currently constructed, yes, has those cuts, but that will change even more now with the COVID-19 impact, and we'll deal with that in the adjustment budget. Honorable Rajbansi, thank you also for your input. I want to assure you already that the Department of Health and other relevant departments are using the EPWP, using the CCGs, and using the CDWs to add value to the many of the groundwork that requires to be done, whether it's in terms of the screening teams, whether it's in respect of each of the 6,000 schools that require a major reorganization of the cleaning systems, the sanitizing systems. So rest assured that that is already receiving attention. Honorable Maggie Governor, again, thank you as usual for your very concise and insightful input. Let me reassure you the reprioritization work is very, very advanced. The only reason that we are unable to be categoric about some issues at this point in time, because we are awaiting some national decisions, and you refer to the procurement regulations, which I think we'll need to unpack. And if anything, I think the portfolio committees in particular perhaps need to have an item on their agendas to say, understand these procurement regulations, these emergency procurement regulations, how are departments supposed to be doing their work. Now, if I could spend just a minute on this particular item. The emergency procurement regulations are there to empower departments to be able to act with speed in responding to the emergency. And therefore, you do not have to go out to full tender processes, which we are very familiar with as sometimes as to how long it takes. But it is not a blank check. It is not a license just to act according to the whims and fancies of any individual official. Some basic constitutional principles must still be complied with. At the very least, the procurement process must be in good faith, it must be transparent, it must be competitive, and of course, cost effective. And that is what some things that we will be interrogating very, 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 very sharply. Honorable Shlabisa, again, I think thank you for your input. I think we'll always disagree on a federal approach, and we'll respect each other's position on that particular aspect. But I don't think there would have been a magic wand to wave if there was more power of taxation in the provinces. Already we have limited powers of taxation in relation to gaming and betting, and we're at risk of losing almost 700 million rand because those particular industries have had to close down in the COVID-19 period. But beyond that, you will have very marginal space to impose additional taxes that will amount to more than we are receiving from the national fiscus. In any event, as KZN, we make up about 16.5% of the economy, and there's a very equitable formula that underpins the allocation to us. So I think it's a little bit misleading to suggest that if we were more federal with more independence to raise more taxes, we will suddenly have a magic wand. But I want to support very strongly your broad message, which I think is being given by others, of saying that we have to do more with less. Let me also assure the entire House that when the issue of the blankets in social development arose, immediately that matter arose, the Premier reacted. The Premier was very concerned. In fact, he instructed and directed Provincial Treasury to perform an investigation and produce a report because he is very concerned about this particular matter. Now, I can understand the impatience that the report is not ready yet, but I can want to assure the House that that report is very, very advanced. And at this point, we can say that I expect to be able to deliver the report to the Premier by the 15th of June, which is, I think, next week or Friday, yes, next week Friday. And of course, the Premier will then need some time to process it. Let me also explain that I also share frustration as to how long these reports sometimes take, or most times take. In fact, I've done an analysis and asked them for my team for an assessment. And if you look at over the last 10 years, there have been more than 400 of these investigations. And on average, they've taken about 12 to 18 months. It's because of the nature in which audit teams do their work. Now, I agree with you that this requires revisiting, that we need to find a new way of doing it. But in this particular case, because of the way we are committed to respond, the way we are committed to consequence management if necessary, I think if we comply with our commitment to deliver the report by the 15th of June, then it would mean that that report would have been produced in about 8 or 9 weeks, which I think is a singular advancement on the historic practice. We must be careful about our haste, because if the report that is produced should suggest that there is no culpability on anyone, then we wouldn't want it to say that this was a rushed investigation which did not do its job properly. On the other hand, if we produce a report that points to culpability on someone or more than one person, which requires consequence management or even criminal sanction, then in that case, that report must be able to stand up to interrogation in any disciplinary action or subsequent criminal investigation. So we will appeal to members to say, yes, you are correct to ask for these reports to be produced with speed, but not to compromise the thoroughness and integrity of that report because we don't do it thoroughly. Now, it is true, and many speakers have alluded to this, that COVID-19 hangs over all of us, and indeed this particular debate. Now, on the 15th of March 2020, President Ramaphosa declared the COVID-19 pandemic a national disaster. And in the approximately 10 weeks since then, we have responded as a nation, I think, with remarkable discipline, resolve, and focus. Yes, there have been issues for debate and disagreement. It would be artificial to expect otherwise. Worldwide, there has been vigorous debate, with some of the best brains in the world having different views sometimes. But no one can dispute that our approach as South Africa has been in line with world best practice, and this has been acknowledged as such, from the World Health Organization to experts in academia and to many, many other countries. But it is critical that we are not distracted from the tasks at hand. The infection peak is yet to come. The economic crisis will deepen. Now, the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal understands this, and we've been hard at work rolling out what we call the 4 pillars of our response. Firstly, we have the health response, which includes the public health education relating to personal hygiene, PPE, and very importantly, social distancing. Might be a simple message, but the task of getting it and entrenched in the minds of every citizen is absolutely critical to determine the extent to which this peak is going to rise. Then there is the medical infrastructure relating to hospital high care and ICU facilities, and of course, isolation and quarantining facilities. Very importantly, there are the screening, testing, and contact tracing programs. We have to ensure the procurement of adequate personal protective equipment, as well as employ additional medical professionals, apart from the specialist equipment such as ventilators. And worldwide, this has been a challenge, and I would urge those of you who have not done so from late in the evening to follow the channels that cover what is happening in other parts of the world. At this point, we estimate additional KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health expenditure of approximately 6.8 billion rand, and that may rise. Our second pillar in this response relates to support to the vulnerable, both economic and social. The President's 500 billion rand package has largely been about this. Thus, we have had, and we must appreciate this response. No one in the debate thus far has spoken about it, that we have had top-ups for our existing and new grants, significant top-ups to ease the pain and make it more bearable, the food parcels, the unemployment insurance funds, as well as some other grants and soft loans and other relief measures for our businesses. We must also thank our civil society organizations for their massive contribution towards alleviating the plight of the poorest, mainly in the food distribution program. This is the stuff of social cohesion. This is the stuff that makes up social compacts. The third pillar is that of ensuring compliance with our disaster regulations. This requires a massive coordinated effort from our emergency and law enforcement agencies, who together with our health workers have become the front line of our fight against the virus. Fourthly, and arguably our most complex problem, is to deal with economic recovery on a short, medium, and long-term basis. We are very encouraged by the response of our social partners to the call of our President to build a strong social compact between government, business, labor, and civil society. Vigorous and vibrant discussions have already taken place. The KwaZulu-Natal Economic Council, which represents all the social partners, is hard at work. We have disaggregated the KwaZulu-Natal economy under the leadership of MEC Dube Ncube into 12 sectors, each of which requires tailor-made recovery plans. And we are encouraged by the active participation of all sectors in each work stream. What COVID-19 has done has energized all the sectors of society to say that we have to work together. And in each of these sectors, whether it's finance, agriculture, industrial development, health innovation and manufacturing, clothing and textiles, creative industries, the informal sector, trade and investment, infrastructure development, tourism, which is definitely been hit the hardest, ICT in the fourth industrial revolution, and we even have a sector on the government as a sector focusing on what we call red tape in the regulatory framework. So this is work that is already far advanced, and all the partners are active in these work streams. But all these programs are meaningless if not underpinned by appropriate financial allocations. We expect our direct COVID-19 expenditure in KwaZulu-Natal across the three main line function departments, which would be, originally we thought it will only be largely health and social development, but clearly education is emerged as a very, very big factor in that reallocation of funds. So all of the above must be achieved against the backdrop of a severely contracting economy nationally and internationally. The estimate so far is that the South African economy will contract by 6.8%, and this is sometimes a moving number. But the hard reality is, as receiver of revenue has already told us, that in this year we're probably going to have a 285 billion rand shortfall in the revenue. Now, it's important to look at other countries in the world, and you'll see that all of them are expecting their economies to contract to a very, very similar extent. In fact, Italy is 9.1%. It's only China at 1.2% and India at about 1% that have some positive growth level. So we are not alone in this, and we must be in tune with the best practices in the world as we respond to this. So we acknowledge the meaningful impact of the President's 500 billion rand package. However, there is a legitimate view that the package is more of relief rather than stimulus. And 130 billion.
As you wrap up, Honorable MEC.
Thank you.
As you
We recognize the steps by the Reserve Bank in reducing interest rates by 2.7% since the beginning of the year, but great care must be taken about our already overwhelming debt burden. In conclusion, Honourable Speaker, let me say that these are extraordinarily difficult times which require an extraordinary response. On the one hand, we'll have to meet the demands of our public health response, knowing full well that we are still going to face the peak of the wave of the infection. On the other hand, we must mitigate the economic loss and prepare the ground for a sustained economic recovery. This requires a very special, united and collective effort. It is for good reason that we repeatedly call for a very special, united and collective effort. Let us not falter in this historic task. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable MEC. Thank you, honourable members, for being with us in the debate. Now, honourable members, we've come to the end of the general budget debate, and the House needs to vote on the finance and STACOV reports. We will deal with both in turns, starting with the Finance Committee report. Honourable members, I will request the Secretary to first check whether we are still having all members in quorum in terms of the voting, so that nothing is challenged later on. Secretary, can you check that we are still in order to proceed with the voting?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have checked. We have 72 members in the House. We have quorum.
Thank you, Secretary. As per the request of the Finance Portfolio Committee, I now put the question to the House, which is as follows. The KwaZulu-Natal Legislature agrees to adopt the report of the Finance Committee. As I indicated, honourable members, prior to the start of the debate, I will now go party by party to obtain the vote, and thereafter check if any member wishes to record an individual vote. IFP, I will start with the IFP.
The IFP, Honourable Speaker, supports the budget.
Thank you, Honourable IFP Leader. The DA.
Madam Speaker, the DA supports the budget.
Thank you, Honourable DA Whip. The EFF.
Madam Speaker, as the economic freedom fighters, we are in support of the budget.
Thank you, EFF Leader. The NFP.
Aibo. Honourable Speaker, we do support the budget.
Thank you, NFP, Honourable NFP Leader. The MF.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Minority Front supports the Finance Portfolio Committee report on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable MF Leader. The ACDP.
Honourable Speaker, ACDP also support the budget.
Thank you, Honourable ACDP Leader. The ATM is not in the House. Then we will go to the ANC. The ANC.
Honourable Speaker, the ANC supports the budget.
Thank you, Honourable ANC Whip. Members, I have the votes of all parties. Is there any member who wishes to express an individual vote that is different from their party vote or to abstain? Is there any member that wishes to express an individual vote or that is different from their party or to abstain? Seeing that there is none, Secretary, can I ask for the tally of the votes?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Votes in favor?
Those in favor are 71. Votes against is 0. Abstentions are 0. The total is 71, and the Speaker is not counted. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. I therefore formally declare that the votes in favor of the report is 71 and 0 against, and there were no abstentions. The ayes have it. Now I will be moving to voting on the STACOV report. As per the request of STACOV, I now put the question to the House, which is as follows. The KwaZulu-Natal Legislature agrees to adopt the report of STACOV. As I indicated prior to the start of the debate, I will now go party by party to obtain the vote and thereafter check if any member wishes to record an individual vote. I will start with the IFP. The IFP.
Honorable Speaker, the IFP gives full support.
Thank you, Leader IFP. The DA.
So Mlom, the DA supports.
Thank you, DA Whip. The EFF.
Madam Speaker, we concur with the report.
Thank you, EFF Leader. The NFP.
Is being supported, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, NFP Leader. The MF.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Minority Front supports the STACOV report with our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. MF Leader, the ACDP.
Speaker, ACDP support the report.
Thank you, ACDP Leader. The ATM is not in the House, therefore I'll go to the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The ANC supports the report.
Thank you, ANC. Chief Whip. Now, members, I have the votes of all parties. Is there any member who wishes to express an individual vote that is different from their party vote or to abstain? Is there any member who wishes to express an individual vote that is different from their party vote or to abstain? Seeing that there is none, Secretary, can I ask for the tally of the votes?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The voting results are as follows. Votes in favor, 71. Votes against, 0. Abstentions, 0. The Speaker does not cast a vote. Thank you.
Honorable members, I therefore formally declare the result of the vote as follows. Votes in favor is 71. Votes against 0 and abstention 0. The ayes have it. That brings to closure that brings to the end the item on the general budget debate. Secretary. The item that speaks to the general budget debate has been concluded. Honorable members, we have now come to the end of that debate, but this afternoon at 1 p.m., all members are required to reconnect to the virtual session through the same link that you used for this morning's session. This session will be on the format of a committee of the whole House. The first debate will be on Vote 1, the Office of the Premier, which will be chaired by Honorable G.N. Swarf Bointombela, and will be followed by the second on Vote 4, Economic Development and Tourism, which will be chaired by Honorable S.A. Duma. Members must please note that these afternoon sessions are not split and will start at 1 p.m. and is scheduled to finish at 10:06 in the evening. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., members will be required, as per the program issued by the Whips Forum, to connect to the extended committees of the House. 2 separate debates will be taking place at the same time, and members must connect to the debate in which they are participating or to whose cluster they belong. These debates will continue and end with vote 2 on the legislature on Friday, the 5th of June, whereafter the House will resume to vote on the KwaZulu-Natal Appropriation Bill 2020. Members are therefore requested to join the link for the debate in which they will be participating in. Is there any announcement that is coming from the Premier? Any announcement from the Premier?
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you for offering us this opportunity. And we take this opportunity to thank all members who have participated in the proceeding. And our announcement relates to what a statement made earlier by Honorable Rogers. With due respect, the Honorable Member is accusing us of meeting him and promised that we will have it, and that didn't take place.
Point of order. Point of order, Speaker. Point of order. Point of order, Speaker.
Honorable Premier. Honorable Premier. Honorable Premier. May I request you to make an announcement that relates to government, not to necessarily a debate, because Honorable Rogers was debating, participating on the general budget debate. If the Premier needs to respond, must respond during a debate or through a other route, but this isn't.
Can I make an announcement?
But not related to
the government. We will continue to ensure as government that we meet with all members of the legislature who want to contribute to the development of our programs and their implementation. And therefore, the office of the Premier will still be coordinating a meeting with Mr. Rogers to contribute on
Point of order, Speaker. I'm an honourable member. I'm not Mr. Rogers. Point of order.
Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I'm done.
Okay, but let's address all members as honourable member. Thank you.
Thank you. Please withdraw, Honourable Rogers.
The House therefore adjourns until Friday, the 5th of June at 5 p.m. Thank you, Honourable.
Order, Madam Speaker.
Yeah.